Welcome back to the fourth video in the cold email crash course series. In this video, we're going to be focusing on how to actually launch our campaigns using Send Now. So we've done all of the hard work so far. We've worked on who our ICP and personas are. We've done our research and built our lists in ready to send emails to them. And we've also drafted our message copy and planned out our sequence. So in this video, I'll be spending a lot more time in Send Now and showing you how to set up a campaign in the platform. And I'll be switching between the workbook and the Send Now platform just so you can see the nuances that you might have to keep in mind when it comes to launching your first campaign. So let's get started. Right, we're in the workbook and I just want to highlight the 4 steps that you need to think about when it comes to launching your campaign in Send Now. These are contacts, the sequence, the schedule, and the settings. And in the workbook, I've covered a number of bullet points of things that you need to consider and keep in mind when it comes to building out that campaign. For the interest of time, I've already created a campaign in Send Now, but I'll show you as I walk through these different steps. So the first thing that we need to think about is the contacts that we want to add in our campaign. So before you import your contacts, you want to check that all of your formatting, especially if you're using merge tags within your emails, is correct. You've had a look at those and deleted any all caps or any emojis that may have pulled through. When you import your contacts, you then want to verify the emails using Send Now's built-in email verifier. You only want to send emails to those that are verified. Don't send emails to any that are risky. It will impact your deliverability and the success of your campaign. You also want to give your list a unique name. So I use a naming convention, which is typically the company name or the product name that I'm promoting, the trigger or the theme of the message, and then also the date. So you can see here, I've got TPO, which stands for the product on borders, engaged with content, because that's the trigger that I'm using, and then I've got the month and the year of when this campaign is being launched. And you can see here just a simple screenshot of what that looks like. The other thing that you need to keep in mind when you're adding in your contacts is to actually merge the fields together and map your CSV headers. So you can see in this image here that I've got first name in my spreadsheet and I've mapped that to the CSV header of first name. I've then got email, and then I've got company URL. Now, obviously, if you're adding in different merge tags that you've got in the spreadsheet that you're importing, you'd want to create these custom variables in this part of the process so that you can merge those fields in the email body itself. But let's get into the campaign builder now. And as I mentioned, I've worked on one already just to save time. So I've clicked in here and you can see that I've got some contacts which are ready to go. We've talked about the contacts, so I'm going to talk through the sequence now. So things to consider when creating your sequence. So I like to put in all of the text, so all of the emails, and then I go through and double check the formatting. I also go through and add in the steps after. For me, it's just put all of the copy in and then I go and fix it and clean it out. Decide whether you're going to use threads or you're going to create a new email every time. So what I mean by this is when you've got this email here, which is step 1, this is the first email that I'm sending out. When I look at my second email here, I want to make sure that this second email is in reply to the first email that was sent out. Remember, I'm creating emails around 2 main problems that these prospects face. So I want my main email and my follow-up email about problem number 1 to be in the same thread. However, when it comes to step 3, this is a different problem or a different challenge that my persona faces. I actually want to start a new thread. So by doing that, I've unticked this box here and I've created a new subject line. And I follow the same format for the step 4, which is the 4th email in the sequence, where I'm actually threading this reply. So the follow-up email will go to that 3rd email that I shared just before. Another thing to keep in mind, especially if you're copying and pasting in your content from a Word doc or Google Doc or anywhere else, is you want to paste it in plain text formatting, or at least clear all of the formatting. You can actually clear the formatting just by hovering over all of your text and click here. That just removes any sort of errors and additional spacing that might come in from pasting. I'm not sure how it happens sometimes, but it does. So you want to make sure that you tidy that up. Another thing to keep in mind is when you're adding in variables, so what it looks like without a variable is just a blank bit of space. But I can click add variable in email, click first name, and I just want to make sure that there's no extra space here or a few extra spaces beforehand as well. The main reason for this is to make sure that people don't think that this is obviously a cold email that they're receiving. So when you do have a look at all of your emails, paste in your copy in plain text and then go through and check each of the emails. I personally always send a test email to myself, so let's have a quick look at how to do that. So I'm going to click send a test email. I'm going to choose which email account it's going to come from. So that's the product and borders. And I'm just going to send it to this email address of mine, .co.uk, send test email. And then within a minute or so, it should be in my inbox. It's already here. So what am I looking for when I'm checking this email? Well, first of all, I want to see that the spacing is correct when it comes to the merge tag. I want to see how the line breaks look and if there's not any additional formatting. I want to make sure that all of the text is the same size, the same color, but because I've removed that formatting and I'm sending it as plain text, that usually isn't an issue. And lastly, I want to see if the unsubscribe text has been added as well, and I'll show you how to add that later in this video here. So this email looks good for now, and what I do is, and what I've done previously is I've tested all of these different emails and sent a different version to these emails to myself, just to make sure that they are looking and working correctly. So the last thing when it comes to the sequence to think about is the delays that you want to add in before each step. So in this case, this email is going to be sent out, and then I'm going to wait for 2 days and then send the second email. After the second email, I'm going to wait for 6 days before sending the third email. And you can do these here, you can edit these here by saying wait for 2 days. I can put in 3, or I can add, or I can just reduce that down to 2 because that's what it was before. And I can simply just click anywhere else and it's going to save that setting there as well. So that's how you set up the different delays and stages between each step in the prospecting sequence. Note that I didn't use the A/B testing feature in SendNow, which I can add a variable in the subject line. The reason being, this is just an example campaign. I'm not sending it out to a large volume of different prospects. But if you are sending a campaign out to a large volume, over 200, let's say, then you might want to try A/B testing some of your copy, some of your calls to actions, as well as the subject lines to see which ones are going to generate more replies. Okay, so that's the sequence. So again, it's going to take you a little bit longer because I pre-built this sequence before, but now I want to click on the schedule. So when it comes to the schedule, you want to think about the days that you want to send your emails out. So this is very basic, Monday through to Sunday. I don't want to send my campaign out on Saturday and Sunday. It could be that your personas and prospects might be working over the weekend, and if that is the case, then feel free to send your emails on these days as well. But for me, Monday through to Friday works. In terms of start time and end time, I usually like to send my emails a couple of hours before and a couple of hours after the typical 9 to 5. I feel like with everybody working remotely or even those commuting, people are often checking their emails before they get to work. So I typically send it anytime between 8 and 7 p.m. And because a lot of the prospects that I'm sending my emails out to are based in the US, I've just picked the time zone here. Now, of course, you can change this time zone to be whichever one is going to be most relevant for the prospects that you're emailing out to. And to save time in the future, if you're constantly sending the emails to the same prospects or similar prospects, you can actually save this schedule as a template, just to save you a bit of time in the future. On to the next step. So now I'm adding the sender accounts. Now the great thing about SendNow is that it automatically handles inbox rotation for me. So no matter how many inboxes I put in here or how many sender accounts I add in, SendNow is going to take it in turns to rotate the emails that are sent from. So in this case, prospect number 1 gets an email from Mark at Get Product Onboarders. Prospect number 2 gets an email from Mark at Get the Product Onboarders. And then prospect number 3 goes back to this email account as well. So if you add 10 different domains in here, which you may want to do, you'll be able to manage that all without having to do anything manually as SendNow handles it all for you. To add more sender emails, you just simply go in here and click the ones that you haven't got in your campaign so far. But like I said, I've already spent time doing this. Managing my campaign settings, so I've got the maximum emails to send per day at 100. The maximum new contacts to prioritize is 100. This is a default setting, so stop email sequence on first reply. Really important that we stop the sequence because we don't want somebody to reply either positively, neutrally, or negatively to our emails, and they get some automatic follow-ups as well. I've actually turned off open tracking. This is up to you. Personally, I don't trust the open tracking data in any platform, nothing to do with SendNow itself. It's just how the email clients actually track and open. Also, from a deliverability point of view, having any links or tracking pixels in your emails can be an indicator to the spam filters as well. So I tend to turn it off, and obviously I'm looking for my replies. If I'm getting replies, I know that people are getting my emails. I've also selected send emails as plain text. So that removes all the images and other elements and HTML from the email itself. Again, just to help with deliverability. The more basic the email looks, the better it is. And you'll notice that I didn't have a signature with my name, my photo, my LinkedIn profile, and my website. Because again, I want to reduce the amount of links and increase the chances of landing in the inbox. Finally, the final setting here is to enable an unsubscribe link. Along with that theme of not wanting to put in links, I've made sure that I haven't ticked this option here, and instead I've put some text in. So you can see if these emails aren't helpful, please reply back to me, and I'll make sure to remove you from any future emails. And you can see that here in the email itself. Now that will just to make sure that I'm compliant in my campaign based on the data and privacy regulations that I'm working towards, but check your own before you hit go on your campaign. So that was the schedule, and that's the settings, and that's pretty much it. So you can see how quickly we can build the campaign. The thing that takes the most amount of time, once you've already written your copy, is just simply pasting it into your sequence. But I'm going to hit onto the final step now, and I'm just going to check my launch summary. So what it's telling me is a total of 17 contacts were added. That's great. My sequence, I'll be sending 5 emails to each contact for a total of 85 emails, which is great. And here's my schedule. So now I'm ready to hit launch. This will launch your campaign. Okay. So it processes my campaign. It can take a few moments, especially if you've got more contacts as well in your sequence. It might take a little while, but that's pretty much it now. I can just sit back and wait for those positive replies to come in. And of course, there's a little bit more work we need to do when we think about optimizing our campaigns and looking at what benchmarks we should be aiming for, which I'll go on to in just a second. So when it comes to monitoring your campaigns, the first place you can look is in the actual campaign view itself. So as you can see here, this is just the campaign that I launched previously. And by the way, I'm recording this on the weekend, so these emails are going to be scheduled on Monday. And this is a spare account that I'm using for the purpose of this video training as well. But in here, you'll be able to see the things like the sent, how many emails this person has been sent, how many times they've opened, replied, and interested, if they've interested at all. But to really know if your campaign is working, the most obvious sign that you'll see is that you get replies. Don't be too disheartened if you get some negative replies or neutral replies. Certainly don't reply to people, especially if they've been rude to you. It's much better just to simply ignore it. However, take it as a good sign that people are actually seeing your emails, which means it's landing in the inbox in some instances and not in the spam, and they've replied to those emails as well. You really need to have about at least 200 prospects go through one whole campaign before you really have enough data to know if your campaign is working or not. As I mentioned, the obvious thing will be the replies that you get, but you should also be keeping an eye on your bounce rates, your unsubscribe rates, as well as and maybe open rates if you are tracking those to begin with. Another place within the platform to see the replies that you're getting is the global inbox. Again, in this demonstration, I haven't got any active email correspondence in here, but here I'll be able to see all the replies that I'm getting, and I can filter them by interested and not interested as well. So that's when it comes to monitoring the campaigns. In terms of optimizing or benchmarks to look for, it can be really hard to give a one-size-fits-all benchmark around outbound prospecting and cold email, but essentially you want replies, as I've mentioned. Everything that you do and everything that you test should be geared towards increasing those replies. A good rule of thumb to think about is that you should aim for at least a 5% reply rate. That's what you're aiming for. Once you hit that, then you should try and optimize and test to increase that reply rate to 10%, then to 15% and to 20%. The smaller the campaign, the better reply rates typically you'll receive. And if you've followed all the instructions in the workbook, then you should be able to get some of these replies and achieve the 5, the 10, and maybe even the 15% as well. The key thing here is the list building and the research you've done on your persona, and then finally the messaging as well. Please note that open rates are inaccurate, so you should turn those off. Tracking is Send Now. Again, that's not limited to Send Now. It's just any open rate tracking in any platform just isn't 100% accurate and enough for you to rely on really as well. When it comes to bounce rates, you should keep those as low as possible, especially if you're double verifying the emails, which you're able to in Send Now, but they should not exceed 3% as well. And if it does, these bounce rates do bounce, then you need to revisit your lead research process and make sure that you're finding verified emails only. So Lastly, we're going to talk about the optimization of your campaigns. So if you followed the workbook to this point, you've done a pretty good job of ticking off as many boxes as possible when it comes to setting up a campaign correctly. However, you always want to look for improvements, and in this section, we'll share some of the most common optimizations that you can try. The biggest improvements in your cold email campaigns will be when you constantly test new approaches. A campaign that worked last month doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work next month as well, so always be testing. There are two main triggers or levers that you can pull when it comes to testing. And the first is to adapt your targeting. So if you're not getting the positive replies, then perhaps you're sending your emails to the wrong person or the wrong type of people in the first place. So even though you spent time working on your ICP and personas, you might need to spend a little bit more time exploring whether your assumptions were correct. One way that you can do this is actually have conversations with these personas to find out whether your hypotheses and whether your findings are correct by simply asking them. I'm sure there's going to be some people within your network or extended network that would be able to help you out with this as well. Additionally, you might want to try a different trigger to see if you can increase your reply rates as well. As I shared in the previous video, there's over 30 different triggers for you to try, and perhaps the one that you used to begin with just wasn't the right trigger for you to use in your campaign. Finally, you can test new messaging. So if you're confident about your targeting and the research that you've done in your ICP and personas, then testing your messaging is a good idea at this point. But remember not to make too many changes at once, because it'll be hard for you to work out which change actually made the difference when it came to getting more replies and more positive replies. But you could try different pain points, different calls to action, perhaps different subject lines, and maybe try adding in some more personalization as well. These are all things that you could do to optimize your messaging. I'm sure we'll record another video in the future which goes into a lot more detail about campaign monitoring and optimization. But for now, that pretty much concludes this 4-part A to Z cold email crash course. The last thing I want to show you in the workbook is the appendix. So here, there's a bunch of additional resources, such as an example sequence plan. We've got an initial email checklist for you to work through as well, and then some space for you to create your messaging theme for your campaign, as well as the draft emails that you want to send in your campaign. It's totally fine if you want to create this in your own document, but we thought we'd at least give you the opportunity to copy and paste it out of here. And then lastly, I've shared my whole process and message theme for the Product on Borders campaign that I've used as an example throughout this whole course. And of course, all of the emails that I've used as well. Now, I hope no one copies and pastes these exactly and sends it to their prospects unless you're doing the exact same service as me. That's just not going to work for you. But hopefully this gives you the inspiration that you need. And if you have any additional questions, you can join the Facebook group here with the Send Now Cold Email Playbook. I'm going to be in here doing my best to actively answer questions, and perhaps we'll host some AMA sessions as well. But in the meantime, join the group. If you have questions, put them in here, and I'll do my best along with the Send Now team to reply as quickly as we can. Thank you and good luck. Take care.